Hey guys, I hope that y'all can hear me because got my my living room window air conditioner keeps kicking on and staying on, and I mean it sometimes cycles on and off, but it's been staying on for the last few hours or so because it's hot today. So anyway, want to do this video here about in regards to like whole house humidifiers. You know what? It's kind of like boggles my mind how you can Google anything you want online, find pictures of anything you want online, including like vintage fans, vintage dehumidifiers, vintage TVs, and you can find all, you can just click on images and Google and find out any photo you want, whenever you Google like vintage this and that. But it's just surprising to me, but of all the vintage stuff, including YouTube videos, there's not the first photo, or there's only one video of like a vintage whole house humidifier, and that's it. There's no pictures of vintage whole house humidifiers, almost nothing on YouTube about the whole house humidifiers, except for I've only seen one video of a vintage whole house humidifier. But that the video of the whole house humidifier that I watched, it's definitely not designed like the vintage humidifiers I saw when I was a child. So the video I saw of a vintage humidifier is definitely oh, here's what I was going to say. It's probably newer than the vintage whole house humidifiers I remember as a kid. Just okay. Go ahead and kind of like describe what a really old vintage whole house humidifier would look like. Let's go to my laptop. As I said, there's no information or photos of vintage whole house humidifiers anywhere. So this is a modern humidifier sold by Amazon, actually, and it's like Air Care Digital Whole House Console evaporative humidifier being sold for $184. And of course, it looks maybe a little bit similar to the humidifiers I remember as a kid, but there's still a big difference. And this is a look around to the side, and the really old humidifiers in my childhood, you see this humidifier and humidifiers similar to this have two fans on top of them. They, of course, the top panel comes off, and you got your two fans right there, and of course, I mean, I remember seeing humidifiers sold at Sears back in the early 2000s and such, and I think humidifiers are like that are still being sold, but the fans are on top of the humidifiers. Here's this image right here. You can see the top image, and there's the two fan openings to the top, and there's your controls right there. So anyway, the humidifiers, I remember as a kid, only had one fan to them. And the fan was in back of the unit. Instead of on top, it had one fan in the back. And how a really old vintage, humidifier would work is like, it would have the reservoir of water you would have to fill up from time to time. And like, inside the unit you had like this rolling pad, and I think you had a motor with it, and like, a stationary roller. And as the humidifier was, running, the rolling pad would be dipped down in the basin. And, it would be kept damp and moist as it was rolling, partially in the water, then up to the fan. And so anyway, I mean, the areas of the rolling pad, of course, that have been through the water would come back up, to the fan. Of course, and the fan would actually, push air through that rolling pad, to push out the moisture to it, and then the moisture would come out the top. And so anyway, that's how really old whole house humidifiers would work. You had the fan in the back, you had a rolling pad, and the fan would suck in air, then push it through that rolling pad and push out the moisture, and it would let it relieve itself through the top vent. Yeah, so anyway, now I'm going to go ahead and tell you all the story. Now that you may be somewhat familiar of how a vintage, whole house humidifier will work. I'm not sure how the new ones actually work. I mean, my therapist surely owns a, humidifier similar to this. Of course, the fans are on top, and I told her how the vintage ones would work, and I asked her how the newer ones would work, and she said something about, doesn't sound like they have a rolling pad, and somehow they, use air wick technology or something like that. I'm not real familiar, but let's go to the story. Before I start the story, let me say this. I do not own a humidifier. I do not feel the need to invest in a humidifier, but I'm just, fascinated with the really old, humidifiers as I remember them. But so, when we lived in Illinois before 1983, there was this couple that lived across the street from us. Of course, an older couple. I mean, their names, Ira Wally and Sue Hanson, and of course I heard that Sue Hanson passed away some years back. I mean, last I heard of Wally, several years ago, sounded like he was still alive, but if he's still alive today, he would definitely probably be over 90 years old. I haven't heard any updates in a long time, but Wally used to be my mom's high school principal whenever my mom was in high school, and they were also our next door neighbors, and there were a few times we went to their house, and and Wally and Sue Hanson owned a vintage whole house, humidifier, as I depicted to the best of my ability. Rolling pad, fan in the back, water basin, of course. And one day when I was over there, I think Sue took off the top grill and filled the basin up, and I could see from the top down inside, the fan to it, the fan, well, it was a four-bladed fan, and I really liked it, and I thought that, four-bladed fan in the humidifier was real fascinating, and I told Sue Hanson, how I like that, fan in the humidifier. Then she describes to me how that humidifier works. Told me the same thing I just, told you guys and all that stuff. But anyway, so anyway, it's... Of course, I remember, also Sue Hanson giving us these strings of bubble gum and let me and my sister Jenica chew them, and then she would just tell us, well, whenever you get tired of chewing them, just throw the gum away. But it was good to chew on, but it's just, I just remember, still remember that Wally and Sue's humidifier really well. It's not real well, but pretty well. I remember exactly how it was designed, exactly how it worked. And of course, there was another time we were at their house and that humidifier was running, and I would kind of tilt that humidifier and look in the back of it just so I can watch a fan turn around and all of that stuff. And one day Wally had taken that humidifier out to the lawn with a hose, and he was out there spraying it out and cleaning it up. So those are the instances I remember of that humidifier. Sue filling it up, me being fascinated with the fan, and then Sue describing to me how it works, and also me tilting it back forward to watch the fan spin, and also Wally having it out in the yard, and spraying all around it with a water hose to clean it up. And I remember a few other humidifiers, like that, the same principle and all. But one day somebody, there used to be there still is a Goodwill store in this town, but at the time Goodwill was located by Ingalls, and it had this big old storage, tin building where people would drop off their stuff they don't want anymore. And one day, I drove by there, and I saw a vintage humidifier just like what Wally and Sue had. And if I would have known ahead of time, this was back in the early 2000s when I didn't have the knowledge of how fascinating and how good vintage appliances really were. If I would have known that, I would have picked that humidifier up and kept it for myself. And of course, I remember, also way back when we still lived in Illinois, us being at somebody's house. I don't remember where it was, but they had one of them vintage, whole house humidifier stored away in their garage. And I also remember, years ago, back when I was probably in my 20s, passing by this antique store going through, Calhoun, Tennessee. And, of course, they had the patio with all their, antique items. And I saw, within all the merchandise, one of them, vintage whole house humidifiers turned around with, the fan showing, to the back and all that stuff. I mean, but that is exactly how I remember, like, a whole house humidifier from way back in the day. I mean, why in the shit does, why in the shit are there not any YouTubers that have a video of one of these whole house humidifiers as I depicted? I mean, of all the vintage things you see on YouTube, can't find, a vintage humidifier, demonstrated as I remember from my childhood. And, and also, I mean, oh, there's a train in the background blasting their horn. I hope it doesn't interfere with this video, but I mean, will do. But, and also, whenever I Google vintage humidifiers online, I mean, can't find the first picture of a vintage humidifier of any sort, or, of course, I mean, much less can't find the vintage, humidifier I'm talking about, and can't really find a picture of a vintage humidifier of, any kind. It just blows my mind, Of all the photos and articles about vintage appliances, not the first one about a vintage, humidifier, except for that just one YouTube video of a vintage humidifier, but it's of a vintage humidifier, that's newer from what I remember, because the fan is not in the back of it, it's down inside the unit, so it must be maybe a newer model, I don't know, but, I just thought I would get this, off my, chest tonight, of course. Guess, I mean, it's, of course, it's just, of course, I'm autistic, and these are the kind of memories that, run through my brain and come out my mouth from time to time, knowing me by now, right? Well, anyway, y'all have a great week and catch you on the next one.